Hello, and be welcome to the world of darkness. Long ago was it that the sin of Cain spawned the cursed horror that stalks the street at night in search of living blood. The kindred have long been a secret influence through all ages of human history, plotting against one another in a never-ending jihad. Their immortal progeny are among us to this day, hidden from the eyes of humanity by an elaborate masquerade. It is fortunately not a very long walk through the streets of Whitechapel. Crossing Whitechapel Road is maybe the hardest part, as there is the occasional carriage or even horse and rider going past, but fairly simple from there. Cutting into one of the very narrow streets or alleys, you couldn't even call it a street, lined with the various hanging clothes and sheets, women calling from the tops of stairs and windows to the young man's attention, though they can't see him very well. A couple of them even accuse Rebecca of stealing their business. Rather insulting. You make your way through to the other side on Commercial, immediately greeted to your left by a little over a dozen street urchins, all clustered around a set of doors. They seem to be passing between them from a bag bits of bread. And to your right, a couple of young men wearing all black, some flat caps, and one of them with a top hat, who's reclined on the back steps, a knife catching the light of the moon as he runs his finger up and down it as though testing the edge. They just jabber among themselves. Cutting across Commercial, it's a lot easier than Whitechapel Road. Commercial doesn't get quite as much attention at this hour, though the attention it gets comes in swells. As further down the road, you can see series of wagons, carriages, and carts being drawn up, coming from the docks. In fact, not too far away, Rebecca would know, is where Edmund has some of his Dockland property, at least further to the south. Once you've crossed that street, the neighborhood changes overwhelming. The houses become more compact, the properties more squelched together as you get onto Burner Street. Everything is very tightly pushed together, claustrophobic even, as house upon house upon house line down the way. As across the street there's a large factory or mill of some description from whence a pungent odor of charcoal seems to emanate. In fact, many of the peoples you see here are covered with charcoal smudges along their face and expression. Taking a turn into the Dutfield yard, perception and alertness, both of you. Rebecca, as you wander into this area following Alden, surprisingly, he doesn't seem to pick up on it quite as quickly as you do, but there are voices echoing out from in here, very distinctive, well-refined British voices, the kind you grew accustomed to growing up with your parents and some of the friends of family that occasionally you would meet with your mother. Two gentlemen from the sounds of it. You begin to slow your pace as Alden, you make it just before the corner before you finally catch their voices. One of them going, "I don't know about this, Mr. Harker. Shouldn't we maybe go back to the chapter house?" That's when you stop at the very edge of the corner, just about to come round the corner. If they were to look, they might even catch a glance of your clothes peeking out before you step back. Fortunately, you don't hear any such thing.
Can I tell what they're referring to?
Intelligence and occult. You're not sure. You do know by definition a chapter house would suggest some manner of society, some group gathering. And if these two men are of the same chapter house, likely members of the same type of fraternity, they could even be members of the Golden Dawn. But you don't recognize the voice.
And I can't see them, like I haven't reached.
No, you haven't rounded that corner yet. You can hear them distinctly. Alden can as well, though. By proximity and gifts of Auspex, it shockingly didn't pick them up sooner.
I remain hidden and with my heightened senses up, just listening to them for a moment.
Alden would obfuscate and move back while continuing to listen.
Stepping backwards into one of the little cubbies where one of the cheap wood doors are to these triple-story buildings, apartments, though from the smell they are well overcrowded, especially from the noise coming from behind the door. You recline backwards, crouching down a small flight of stairs, only about 4 steps high to your left, blocking any potential sight of you as you vanish from the mind's eye. Both of you can hear another voice, then answering the younger one. No reason for that. There is a moment's quiet. I'm sad to say I'm beginning to think that this Ripper fellow is plainly human. Well, wouldn't that be a good thing, Mr. Harker? Good for the police, but terribly boring. I was hoping for something of the supernatural. Something to keep my attention. Though we have found other things of more interest. I think it would be more interesting to look into that. The Ripper is focusing his attention on true penny ladies. Let him. Nothing to do with our interest. I think the Arcanum would be better on this ill-fitted, suit-wearing man who's made his attacks upon students, lecturers, and publishers of ideological pamphlets. The police have already discarded that as unrelated crimes, as there is a lack of apparent motive. I do believe, he says as he's getting more energetic, more sharp. You can hear the energy entering his voice now that something supernatural, something exploratory has become the subject. This Harker fellow is much more energetic, much keener on it. I believe he draws some manner of sustenance from his attacks. This Ripper, he kills prostitutes. That's very mundane. He does so in a spectacular way, but this other fellow, he draws some manner of sustenance from them. I wish we could get the medical examinations. Perhaps he is feeding upon them in some spiritual fashion or taking something from them. There's been no lack of organs missing, like from the Ripper. But what if their blood? What if the sustenance he takes is their blood? Mr. Harker, I do believe you have been reading fiction rather than the books we've gathered for the Arcanum. Palladori may have had something there. Certainly, it could be possible for there to be immortals walking among us. Now that, how would they conceal themselves? You begin to suspect that these individuals are not your everyday investigators.
Out of character, are you able to whisper while staying obfuscated at the second dock?
Yes. Well, depending on successes, but you are more than able at the point.
Okay. He would whisper, standing behind Rebecca, asking, "You wish to continue listening, or should we head in?"
Have I heard of what the group that they're from before?
Arcanum? What's in alertness? No, doesn't sound familiar at all. Suggesting a new cult? Secret society? Nothing else, that's interesting. What is Alden doing?
At the moment, he's kind of just waiting behind Rebecca, waiting for an answer. Or for her to act. If she's taking a while, he would whisper in her ear, kind of asking, "We have to do something." And depending on... Well, how long has it been since they've been standing there? Considering his time sense.
Only a few minutes while you've been listening to the men.
Have they ceased to talk?
Not particularly.
He would, with obfuscate still applied, obviously, look out to get almost the image of them in his mind.
What you see is two men, as you had already overheard. There is a slightly younger gentleman, very well dressed, with a doctor's bag at his feet as he's speaking to the older gentleman. Clearly the Mr. Harker. Oh, there we go.
Real quick, would he have been the doctor that I saw?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Harker, with an open notebook in his hand, is writing down with a pencil something or other. Harris looking over his shoulder. Harker seems to ignore him completely before he snaps the book closed, pencil still inside, and taps his chin with the edge. What I would give for an apt description of this gentleman. These are clearly peoples, if you can call them that, who take a great deal of precaution in their personal security, concealing themselves, perhaps acting through intermediaries. What's more, he looks to the gentleman, though it seems like he's acting as this young man is more of a soundboard or a living notebook rather than an actual associate. The activity seems to be exclusively regulated to nighttime. All of these attacks of the women, not the Ripper's victims, but this other gentleman, the one who is seen in ill-fitted suits with curly hair, are persistently taking place at night. We should look over the accounts when we get back. If this is consistent, we may have a nocturnal denizen within our city, similar to the immortal kings of Sumer. I wonder if there is a correlation. And if so, how many? A city the size of London could probably support a couple of dozen of these. I imagine that they would be remiss to gather in too large numbers. The young man rubs his brow. Mr. Harker, what you say is extraordinary, but what evidence do we have of this? Nothing yet. We must gather a bit more. Especially as they particularly seem to enjoy places of history. Perhaps if we were to look around some of the more historical parts of the city, more isolated corners. I mean, it's a lovely excuse to go to the British Museum. I'm sure Haversham would love to have us, though he does seem to have odd hours. Are you sure this is not something we should take back to the others at the chapter house, Mr. Harker? He looks at him and blinks, as though coming back to the realization of, oh yes, you're here. I've already converted my home into the London Meeting House for us. I have no wish to go back there unless it is to overlook what we have. Would enjoy particular... Frankly, not since my time joining the Rising Day have I found something quite so fascinating as when I was deciphering the synthesis of Greek spirituality with modern occult thinking. This could be an entirely new field of research. The research of those nocturnal immortals. Must come up with a better name for them than that. And what are we to do about the Ripper? Ah, yes, the Ripper. Well, there is no real interest to be had in Jack the Ripper, at least not as far as we're concerned. Once we get back to Venavar Hall, we'll discuss it with the likes of the others. Maybe Holmescroft will have something to say.
Would I know where Venaval Hall is?
Intelligence and Streetwise. Oh, correction. That would have been, he would have said was Berkeley Square, which is located in London. That being in Mayfair. And yes, it is a very wealthy neighborhood.
Do they remain there for much longer?
They do very briefly discuss where it is they should go. Harker suggests that he would like to make one quick pass-through of a couple of the girls and inns that they paid money at for people to keep their ears open for anything of note, especially about this ill-fitted suit man, and then return back to the Arcanum's base of operations.
Would there be any, bird of the sorts in my view?
This is Whitechapel. There's tons of birds. Pigeons by the millions shitting from rooftops and lines. More approximate to you, well, there is actually a crow currently pecking at the corpse of a rat at the top of a trash bin to the left, on the other side of the alley space, right before the corner where the men are in Dutfield Yard.
Using animalism, could I call him over to me? Or at least, well, I can't call because I don't have the second off. Could I start talking? Is that possible?
You can speak, but unless you want to speak loud enough that it can hear you from across the way, you might want to get closer.
Cool. I would move out of that little bit where I was watching the people, the group, so that if I was to come out of one, they wouldn't see me. While also moving close to where the bird is, yet still trying to keep a low profile, keeping hidden, when I would try and get its attention.
Well, considered that you are obfuscated, you can get right up close to the bird, who continues to peck and pull at the carcass of the rodent. You're very easily able to make eye contact with it.
Alden, now out of Rift's Gate, would gesture towards where the 3 or so men were, saying, Follow them, and then come back here and let me know what was discussed, please.
Manipulation and animal can. For you are quite easily able to stare into the crow's eyes and speak, your words being conveyed through the silent whispers so it understands. Making a request of animals can always be interesting. Shuffling its wings against its body, the crow looks directly in the direction of which you have been communicating to it in its eyes. You can hear its clawed feet click against the edge of the bin. I will do this. It inclines its head before taking a couple of steps back on the edge of the bin. It then flutters up into the air with a caw before circling above the yard where the men are gathered. You can hear the first clicks of their fine shoes as they begin to get ready to leave. You can even hear the jostle of the doctor's bag as he pulls it off the ground. You, being obfuscated, are fine. But Rebecca, well, do you plan to let them see you, or do you plan to conceal yourself or otherwise just act as if you belong there?
I'm just gonna act as passing through to continue going where we were going to originally.
Can you say that a little louder, please?
Act as though I belong there, just passing through to continue going to where we were going to go originally.
Alright, in which case, manipulation performance. Or appearance and expression. Whichever one fits your fancy, though difficulty will vary.
Manipulation and performance, charisma and expression, or appearance and expression? Which one is it?
As the two men round the corner and begin to descend, you begin to walk forward, acting as though you entirely belong within these walls of Whitechapel. You disregard their presence, walking past them with your head slightly down to conceal your eyes. Two men don't pay much attention to you as they murmur between each other. Yet, Parker, the older one, does pause to look at you for a moment as you pass him, and his gaze, though Alden is the only one seeing it, follows you even so much as he turns around, the younger gentleman asking if, is everything all right, sir? Parker seems to consider for himself.
Can I read him?
Perception, empathy.
Does Auspex help?
Yes. He has an interest in her, though not in a sensual way. Something about her has piqued his interest. You can tell he's very tempted to go after her, confront her even.
Alden would just continue watching.
I'm just gonna keep walking.
Parker motions with a hand to the younger gentleman's chest, suggesting he wait as he begins to go after Rebecca. Just as she begins to turn the corner into the yard proper, she can hear his footsteps behind her as he very politely asks, "Excuse me, would you have a moment?" "Excuse me."
Where is he?
Coming up behind you.
Yeah, with Blush of Life, I would, pause. And, turn halfway to look at him. My hat's still covering my eyes.
Immediately, the man comes to a stop, inclining his head very slightly that you've stopped for him. Sorry to bother you, madam, but if I might inquire, are you sure as to coming down into this yard, considering what happened here not long ago? Most women, I suspect, would hesitate to enter a place in which another woman was murdered. Especially with the killer still on the loose.
I take a moment to look around and say, must have turned onto the wrong street.
Yes, madam, I'm sure that is the case. But now if I may ask a question that I'm more curious about than that sort of business, and do apologize for what I asked. Are you by chance anemic, feeling ill?
A bit of a cold. It gets chilly this time of the year. Why are you asking?
My sincere apologies, madam. I'm a man of many interests, particularly those that some might consider unorthodox. And you by chance remind me of something which has recently taken my interest. He gestures at you, pointing a finger, wagging it more so up and down, before lowering it to his chin, tapping rapidly. You also have an interesting way of walk, a very confident stride, especially for a woman alone, in the back streets of Whitechapel, the East End. If I were to be mistaken, you almost walk with the stride of a predator rather than prey. That is entirely a compliment, madam, but my interest has been piqued by recent events, and I can't help but see a correlation.
Sorry, can I ask something real quick?
Yes.
What is currently around me? Considering I've moved a bit.
Well, there is the trash bins, hanging clothes above you, cobbles and a few rocks underneath your feet, such as the road. And the younger gentleman has walked a bit closer, more so to see what the fuck Harker is doing. And you notice that in his bag he has a very strange pair of spectacles, being that they seem to have above them layers that you can lower with different shades to look at things.
What could I hide behind?
You could potentially hide behind the bins, maybe one of the cubbies of the doors. That would be slightly challenging. It's quite an open space considering the recent murder. People have been very reluctant to use it, so it's been left very untouched for the time being.
How big are the bins?
They reach you at about waist height.
Supposed to crouch behind it, I wouldn't be visible to them.
Not immediately, no.
Okay. And sorry, there are windows above from houses, yeah?
All over the place. Usually about 6 to 8 windows per building. Though many of them do have blinds or shutters. Very few are open, and fewer still have lights on.
Would it be possible to get behind the bin by crouching? Well, yeah, kind of just huddling down. And with what you said, there were pebbles and stuff, yeah?
Some broken bits of cobble and rocks, yes.
Okay. Could I throw a rock to one of the buildings to smash it? And then, obviously, I would have broken Obfuscate. Could I then use Obfuscate again?
All I'll say is make me a strength and athletics for that throw.
As he does this, Rebecca would say to Mr. Harker, "Quite perceptive of you, though perhaps you mistake confidence for purpose, considering, in all honesty, I'm here because I also have a bit more unorthodox interests."
That vigor seems to begin to re-infuse him before you're both taken away from the conversation. A glass shatters above you of a window, immediately followed by some very angry woman going, "What the fucking hell?" Harker looks up, now distracted, and then looking behind him to see what it was that caused that. The younger man comes dashing into the yard to see Mr. Harker, who's still all right, just waves him away. Gives you the time if you wanted to catch him in your own queries, or maybe end the conversation here.
As he looks back, Rebecca just says, "Perhaps this isn't the best place to have a conversation. Though if you do want to continue this, perhaps we could tomorrow night at Regent's Park."
Looking back to you, he says, "Yes, I think that might be for the best, Miss. Sorry, I don't believe I got your name." And with that intermission...